I don't know how anyone can take a look at this segment and think that One Piece is poorly animated or it is just not getting some of the best animation that I have personally seen in a long-running anime. Like, it is honestly jaw-dropping how incredible this segment is. This goes on, I'm not joking, for like 4 minutes. And that's just this segment alone. There is literally multiple moments throughout this episode with just straight up like movie level quality. Like, I want to take a moment to really just look at this frame by frame real quick. There's just so much to really just take away from this. Like, individual frames, in between frames that obviously most people are not going to notice, even look highly detailed and fluid. I love the movement of Kizaru here, seeing how his, like, clones, like his copies, are moving into position. You see the blades coming in, you see the lights coming into the background and all that. You see how the camera is panning and twisting. It is so cinematic, and the choreography of this segment is just... This is anyone that has participated in this episode deserves a straight up pay raise. Like, that is just how high quality it is. Now, before I get ahead of myself and I really gush over this episode, I do want to say a few things. I'm feeling a little bit loopy today. For those that don't know, if you don't follow me on social media, aka Twitter, I went to the doctor this morning, and basically, I've been having, like, a headache for about 8 days now. Don't worry, I went to the doctor, they didn't say it was anything serious. They said I had a pinched nerve in the back of my neck. Basically, they gave me a few shots, they gave me some medicine, and they're like, come back to us in a week if everything, doesn't work out. But basically, I'm okay, but if I seem a little bit, like, I guess out of it, that's the reason why, so do forgive me on that. But with that being said, though, let's get into, this episode. So, basically, this episode of One Piece is, look at that. Look at this frame real quick. Look at the hand, like, here, when it comes in. It is so subtle, but I love the way it is done here. Like, look at that. It's such a quick frame, but the light shining through the hand, it's so cool, because I can't be the only one that's, like, had a flashlight or something, like a very bright light, and put it on your hand, and you see the light come through your finger, something you kind of see, like, the light shine through. That's basically what this is. It's showing that Kizaru's light is so blindingly bright that it's shining through people's bodies, and I love this. It's a nice little detail that obviously the common watcher is not going to notice or care too much about, but it's added there for those that really want to dive in and analyze scenes like this. It's just, like I said, it's very high quality. The entire work of this episode is, I'm not gonna lie, this might be recency bias. It could potentially be, but I'm not going to deny that this might be, at the very least, the top 10 best animated episodes of One Piece. Like, I cannot believe what I have witnessed in this. Like, it keeps going on. It gets better and better. People are trying to slander this, by the way, and say that it's, over-animated. I really hate that term. I really want to say that. I understand where the criticism is coming from. I know what they are trying to mean, but over-animated just seems like there's just... people are upset that it looks so animated that they don't like it. That's what it sounds like. But I will talk about that in a second. I think that is some fair criticism to be had, but I don't think it's necessarily warranted for this episode of One Piece. But anyways, I will say that, this episode, man, like, I love what Toei Animation and the animators are doing for Kizaru versus Luffy here, using the multiple clones and the lights and stuff, the background art. It is a nice culmination of everything that really just makes a good One Piece fight, or a good shonen fight in general. And I mean, it's very clear that those 6 months, like that hiatus we had for the One Piece anime, really did wonders for this show. Like, we really are seeing the benefits and a good example of why giving your staff in the show more production time really is just a benefit overall. It's just a net positive, and I'm very happy that Toei and everyone else that's affiliated with the production of One Piece took the chance of that delay, because honestly, this is the best that One Piece has legitimately ever looked. Like, it's looked really good in Wano, it's looked really good in the first half of Egghead we got, but this stuff, part 2 of Egghead for the anime of One Piece, this is legitimately some of the best, most consistent animation we have ever seen. And don't get me wrong, Wano was very consistent too, and so was Egghead, like the first half of it, but this is just straight up so consistent. It's like next level. Like, it's just movie level animation and art every single segment. Like, look, I'm gonna back up here, and like, there's literally a scene here where you just see like Rob and Zoro duking it out, and it is just such a great moment. And once again, the main spotlight or focus of this episode would be Kizaru and Luffy, but you have this great moment of just these two battling out. Don't get me wrong, really great fight too, but what I'm saying is that they didn't just prioritize one moment of the episode, because that was a common theme, a common thing that happened so often with the One Piece anime. Honestly, with a lot of long-running shows, is that you would have certain fights or certain moments of fights or the series get prioritized and have high-quality animation and art, but everything else would be more or less sacrificed just to make that sequence even better. And that is not the case. It's very clear that the people that worked on this episode, they did not sacrifice segments of the episode. In fact, they were consistent from start to finish, and this really does feel like a completed project. And I am just... it makes me happy as a One Piece fan, as someone that has been watching the One Piece anime since 2011, seeing One Piece like this is legitimately a dream come true. I could not imagine if I was to tell myself in 2011 what I would be witnessing in 2025 when it came to One Piece. I wouldn't believe it, because this is just insane stuff. Now, one thing I want to talk about is this segment. I really love this. I love how unserious Kizaru is. He's always been this type of character. He's always just been like this more lax guy, sounding like he's on something, and I really love him. I love his character. He is always, personally, I'm just going to keep it real here, he's always been my favorite admiral. I've always preferred, out of any of the admirals in One Piece, Kizaru has been my favorite. I really like Fujitora. Don't get me wrong there, but I love Kizaru. He's just a great character, and I love his light ability because obviously it's simplistic, but there is a lot of, you know, ways it can be applied in a fight, and we clearly see that in this episode, and like I said, I love it, big fan. But I love how unserious he is with Luffy, when Luffy's just literally tossing him, and he's like, whoa, whoa, I love it, man. I love his character, dude. It makes me laugh. But, with that being said, though, I guess we should talk about the over-animated, allegations against, this episode of One Piece, because I have seen those complaints. Now, I haven't seen, like, a lot. Like, I haven't seen, like a vast amount, but it is there. And I think people have definitely seen it as well. And it is a conversation that definitely spurs back up anytime you have something like this with One Piece or other anime, so it is very relevant. So let's get into that. Over-animated, what does this necessarily mean? Why does this word exist, etc.? Well, if I had to take an educated guess, there is multiple reasons. One, it's usually out of jealousy. People don't like seeing something that they deem probably they don't like animated so well. Because for a very long time, for like basically a decade, One Piece was the butt of a joke. It was not good in terms of animation. The anime was inferior in every single way in comparison to the manga. It was just not... there was no reason to really watch it unless you're just a diehard dedicated fan. And then Wano came around, and the One Piece anime took a radical shift. We all saw it. And obviously now, thanks to that, most people don't even remember the bad parts of One Piece. That's just how much, you know, reputation and a win that Toei gained themselves with Wano and with also Egghead. So when you think about how One Piece was a long time ago, there's a lot of people that, you know, don't like the fact that One Piece is now no longer able to be clowned on for bad art and animation. Now, usually what people like to use now is pacing, which, yeah, to be fair, One Piece does have some pacing issues with the anime. I'm not going to act like it doesn't. But when people say over-animated, usually it comes from a place of jealousy, most likely. However, there is some criticism there that can be warranted, and this is what I'm going to talk about now. So when it comes to the feat or over-animated in general, what that necessarily means, I feel like what people are trying to say is that you don't understand what's going on the screen. Maybe there's too much movement going on with the characters, maybe the choreography is a little bit funky, maybe the background doesn't mesh well with the way the characters are moving, something feels a little bit off, and so your eyes are not able to process what's necessarily going on in the scene because there's just so much going on. And this is where I think the term over-animated comes into play, because people just don't know what's going on. There's just so many lights, so many bright flashing lights and fights and stuff that you just don't understand what your eyes are trying to look at. And I feel like a good example of this is sometimes within Demon Slayer. Now, no hate to Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer also is a very beautiful show. But there is scenes that definitely are just very flashy in terms of just a lot of colors, and it can be very blinding. And One Piece has had examples of this in the past as well, some moments. Not often, but it does have it too. And what I'm trying to say is that there is criticism sometimes to maybe a scene is just so animated that it's very hard to process because there's just too much movement, and maybe the direction of this, the cut isn't that good. That's my personal opinion on it. You can feel free to disagree with me, but that's my 2 cents. But I do think that in turn, usually over-animated is just used to slander a show. It's not necessarily meant to actually critique it, it's just out of jealousy. But like I said, there is criticism to be had. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. I have spent enough talking about this. Like I said, great episode. I legitimately have just been impressed with the return of One Piece, and I'm glad that it really has continued to remain consistent all these past few years, and it's just getting better and better. But I want to leave it at that. I want to go rest up. Like I said, went to the doctor today, feeling a little bit so gonna just, upload this video and probably lay down. But I love you guys. Be safe. Stay healthy. Chibi out.